Ethical Perspectives on the News is produced by the Interreligious Council of Linn County, which is solely responsible for its content. The views and opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of KCRG TV9.
Good morning, and welcome to Ethical Perspectives on the News. I'm your moderator, Karl Cassell. And today we're going to discuss nationalism and sports. Currently, there exists a level of controversy in America during sporting events that has spilled into the mainstream for those who don't necessarily pay attention to sports or even have a favorite sports team. This is directly due to the kneeling during the national anthem of first Colin Kaepernick of the NFL and now other athletes from different sports who have tried to bring attention to not just injustices in America, but also what they see as police brutality. Many have become upset because the stances of athletes who feel they are disrespecting the flag, the anthem, or even the troops, while the other side says the attempts are being made to force people to pay attention to segments of society that have continually dealt with brutality, discrimination, and marginalization. This morning we have a group of panelists that will help us unpack this controversial issue. First, to my immediate left, we have Dr. Carlos Grant, who is the Director of Middle Level Education for the Cedar Rapids Community School District. Good morning.
Good morning.
In the middle here, we have Bob Rush, who is an attorney at Rush and Nicholson. Good morning.
Good morning.
And our final panelist is Jerry Mackey, who also works for the Cedar Rapids Community School District. Good morning.
Good morning.
And so, sociologist Harry Edwards, who organized the group that birthed John Smith and Smith and Carlos protest, reminded in his seminal 1973 text, Sociology of Sport, sport derives its root from disport, meaning to divert oneself by participating in the mirth and whimsy of frolic. Considering that people have seen sport as sort of a distraction that was created by the ruling class to kind of lull the masses to sleep, is it important for modern day athletes to kind of bring attention to what's happening in the real world to the arena, to the field, or to the Coliseum? And it's for anyone who wants to start.
Well, I'll begin. I think that, so to answer your question, yes. I think that sports is certainly still a venue where public discourse and civil conversation can still exist, primarily because while it serves as a distraction, it's still a representation of the people that enjoy that sport. It's still a representation of all the various aspects of society, lives and resides still in all of the various sporting activities that reside in our country. And I think it's certainly appropriate for the conversations around all kind of issues that we think are valuable to us to live in sports. I think about the issues we bring up around breast cancer and the issues around celebrating our patriotism to our country through our military service. The attention we bring to a lot of different issues reside in sports. And so it's certainly a venue that's healthy, that discourse can live.
Yeah.
Well, when we talk about professional sports, in the major sports, all of the franchises are essentially owned by billionaires, if that's the ruling class you're referring to. I think sports can be a very effective way to communicate. I think the participants in sports certainly have some choices that they can make to lead on issues that are important to them.
Thank you.
Well, I think bringing the awareness is the number one key. Just like Dr. Grant said, when we talk about, we just went through Veterans Day. How important is Veterans Day to all of us?
Certainly.
It's paramount, right? It's the most important thing we have. We're all enjoy all these freedoms to play these fantastic sports and to play in these beautiful venues. And it's all because of freedoms that we have in the United States, which are all protected by our military, which I think is huge. It's the most important thing that we have. We have more freedom of sport in the United States than any country in the world. And it's fabulous that we're able to do all of this. And you know, these guys that are out there playing every Sunday, they are the most gifted and privileged people in the world. Just about everybody in the United States that grew up as a young man or young girl playing sports would give anything to be a professional athlete. Anybody that's played organized sports have got the heroes, and they get to watch them on TV, and it's awesome. But it's all because of all the freedoms that we have.
I would say only in recent times really have all people enjoyed access to the major sports. I mean, it's been during my lifetime that the barriers prohibiting black athletes to participate, that's only been in my lifetime. So that's a relatively short period of time when you put it up against the history of the country. So I think we may all share the same goals. I think the debate may become, how do we go about advancing those goals? What's the best pathway to get there?
Yeah, I agree. I think that I often think about that, Bob, in the sense of, you know, when athletes are, and we'll put in the context of black athletes for the sake of argument, there's often been this comparison of you have the privilege and you have the ability to play this sport. Very, very fortunate to do that. The only thing that you should be doing right now is playing that sport, right? And I think the danger in that, or the opportunity that's lost in that, is these individuals have worked very, very hard at their craft for so many, many years to accomplish and be at the top of their craft at this something that's so very intricate, that we lose sight that their voice is just as powerful as anybody else. And so when there's disagreement, when individuals want to bring that conversation up, it's often from a lens of the majority group and the individuals who say, this is not the right context for that conversation. And I agree with you. It should be more about how can we make the dialogue to the next level that is helpful and not destructive, and not picking sides about who's right and who's wrong.
Those are good, all of you. Thank you. So when we think of nationalism, naturally we look at things like the Olympics. It brings national pride in our country. We're competing against some 200 plus other countries from around the world. So has there always existed what we call nationalism in sports, or is it more natural or a recent phenomena because of a lot of the pomp and circumstance that we've added to it? So is it recent, or is it always existed? We just have it given to us much more because we're inundated with what we call mass media.
Well, I would say we've always had sports. We've always, and whether it's sports or film or whatever the art field might be, we, right or wrong, have placed on pedestals those professional athletes, those actors, above, among others, educators. But that's, you know, a reflection of where we are as a society. And I think perhaps with those elevated positions, maybe there's extra responsibility to be careful on how I want to exercise my fame and the voice that I can command when I speak.
And you think of the time of the conflicts, the most recent Olympics, we were at issue with Russia, okay? So the Russians didn't get to take part. How sad was that? These athletes that had trained so long and so hard, and because of what was going on, and of course the media blew it all up and enhanced everything. And so those athletes didn't get to take part. I feel horrible for those people. They worked a lifetime to be at that level and didn't get to play. And you go back in the history, it seems like there was always something going on at the Olympic times. You know, we had the Munich deal way back when, and when you're on the world stage and these things come into play, it's so sad for the people that have worked so hard and don't get to take part because of the unrest that's going on.
Right. You know, I always I get nervous and apathetic when I hear the words nationalism, particularly in sports or in any context, primarily because of the historical context of what the word nationalism brings with it. I think about, that versus patriotism. Nationalism always has this connotation of one group's better than another group, and so then we must diminish this other group that we despise. And I don't know if that's healthy. I'd much rather like to hear the term patriotism in sports, because that is a sense of pride in the country and a sense of belonging of that particular country. And when you put in the context of Olympic competition in sport, then you're talking about competing on that level of representing your country in a very positive manner. The term nationalism just has so many negative connotations with that when you try to diminish another group of people. I think that's, and when we frame it that way, I see that happen. I see that frame of that conversation now where one group is bigger than the next group and somebody's more valuable than another group. And so then the conversation discourse gets lost in this divisiveness, and it's just not healthy. So, patriotism versus nationalism, I think, is a much more healthier conversation.
And you guys bring up great points. So do the athletes end up being victims of circumstance, and then do we end up minimizing athletes from other countries because, please, they're not Americans, they're not from the US of A, so they can't be nearly as good as we are. Is that dangerous? When we're looking at athletes who have worked their entire lives to get to that a stage, that pinnacle of their career to compete, but we allow the politics of our nations to cloud what's happening on the field. Is that dangerous?
I don't think the athletes do it themselves. I think you're exactly right. I think the athletes are the victim of the circumstance. I think they clearly understand the value of competing with athletes from all around the world, because they understand how hard people have to work to do that. So you're the same thing. When the Russians couldn't compete in the past Olympics, other similar athletes probably devastated, but they wanted to compete against the best. And so I think when if we don't recognize, acknowledge that hard work, then it can be a minimizing type of effort and deal.
Anyone else?
Well, I think we don't have to go back too far in history, but with Hitler's nationalism, we saw firsthand how Olympic Games can be used to advance political agendas.
Absolutely.
The Soviet Union was no rookie when it came to competing nationally for fame associated with their system of government, and the Chinese, you name it. So the athletes, in some ways, are used by political leaders of the countries. And certainly as an American, we're proud of our athletes to succeed and to achieve and to win as many medals. I think it's only been in my lifetime that the media keeps track of the medal count, and it becomes a big deal. It's like the Cubs winning the series.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Nothing bigger.
Bob, you brought up a great point when we look at Hitler's Germany and we think of Jesse Owens during that time, and we know what Hitler was trying to propagate. But then Jesse Owens comes back to the U.S., having won all these gold medals, and is never invited to the White House, is never honored in the manner that his counterparts were. And you juxtapose that with the 1968 Olympics, and you have John Carlos and Tommy Smith raising their fist in Mexico City as a sign of solidarity to those who were back in the U.S. fighting on behalf of the civil rights movement. When we look at what Hitler did, we know these two athletes in Mexico City were stripped of their medals and had to leave the games after that because they quietly protested. Can we look down our nose at any other nation for what they try to propagate in terms of their nationalism and national pride?
No, I think we're right there at the head of the pack, and we're competing on a nationalistic basis. Is that good or bad? I would say the guys that protested in 1968 they've left a bigger message than the medals that they were stripped of.
Certainly.
We're talking about them today. They brought to the table a conversation that we should have been having for 100 years or more before they had the guts to stand up.
Amen. Yeah. Anyone else want to add?
Yeah, I think so yes, I agree with you, Bob. And I wonder when we will learn the lesson, because we've seen this story happen repeatedly in our country's history. I think about Muhammad Ali protesting, the Vietnam War, and being ostracized for his stance on that. And now today we honor Ali. We think he was one of the greatest athletes ever to grace this earth. And then we just imposed that to Colin Kaepernick's stand and Eric Reid's stands right now. And we can predict that in about 20, 25 years, they're going to be celebrated. But in the moment when they're protesting, silently protesting, an issue that should be addressed, our country's history has been to ostracize and to criticize and not understand what the issue is versus the actual protest in itself. So I just wonder when we're actually going to learn the lesson and stop repeating the mistakes over and over again.
Right. Anything to add?
I agree with everything you say, but my question is the right place to protest during the national anthem? I have issue with that. I don't think that's the place to protest.
So unwrap that a little bit and talk to us. Instead of me asking the questions, let's have the dialogue. When is a better time, and why is that not the right time, per se?
The people that are on that stage are put there by the people that buy tickets. Okay? They're there to perform a sport. And that's what I want them to do. I want them to play the sport. I want them to stand proud for the national anthem and recognize that they get to do what they love to do. And it's fantastic that they have that opportunity. If they want to protest, I have no problem with them protesting. But I don't like the fact that they protest during the national anthem.
Okay. Anyone?
Yeah, I think so I hear what you're saying, and I'm trying to process it. I guess what I would offer as an invitation would be to think that other people also purchase tickets to that venue, who think who agree with that ability to do that. And the purpose, I think, behind it is to draw attention. We're sitting here this morning talking about that, about the reason why they're doing that, which is, one, not to disrespect the flag, but to bring attention to the killing of unarmed people of color by the hands of police officers. Is to protest the juvenile or the justice system. It is to protest and bring attention to people of color still being marginalized in this country, and the point being that if we continue to stand for the anthem, which we should do that part, it is that anthem says that everyone's treated equally under the law, and we're all treated to that point. And what I think they're trying to say is we have not yet arrived to that point yet. We aspire to do what the anthem says, but we have yet not arrived to that. It's a lofty goal that I think we're trying to do. And I think that they're trying to bring attention to it. So when and where to protest, I'm not quite sure you can define that, because the purpose of behind protest is to grab attention. And then once you have attention, now let's have some conversation to do something about the thing we're trying to bring attention to. So at some point, what I would offer to people who are kneeling on doing the national anthem is, once you've gotten the attention, now let's stand up and let's get to the table and let's make some decisions around the issues that are causing these whatever the cause is that we're talking about. So it's just something for you to think about under that standpoint, and also from the lens of having respect for the flag should be seen in a myriad of different experiences. So standing through the national anthem, if that is the standard, then everyone should do that. So when we go to concession stand, maybe we shouldn't buy the beverage. Maybe everyone in the concourse should stop what they're doing, but we don't do that. People still continue on. If you're in your home and you're sitting on the couch when the national anthem is playing, maybe you should stand up at that time to do that. So we shouldn't just put that expectation and standard on the athlete. If that's what it means to be patriotic, then we all should be to that same standard as well.
I think Jerry's view is probably shared by the majority of Americans. For me, I look at the flag a little differently. The flag to me is a symbol of freedom. It's a symbol of everything that people have fought and died for. And those freedoms include freedom of expression. And so I don't see it as a sign of disrespect. I see kneeling as simply a way to say, hold it, let's think about where we are as a country. Where do we want to go as a country? How do we get there? I don't mean it as disrespect for those that have given their lives for me to be on this field and participating today.
I certainly hope that it is not.
Yeah.
And that would be my hopes all the way, that
Right.
that's not a sign of disrespect.
Yeah.
If they are trying to bring to the forefront a certain issue, fine.
Yeah.
But is the field of play the place to do it?
Yeah.
That's my opinion. I think they need to go to the courthouse, the state house, their senators, go to public meetings, go to city halls, whatever the case may be, to bring that to the forefront. Think about all the athletes that have gone on to be great politicians. You know, Kevin Johnson was a great player for the Boston Celtics.
He's in
He became
Sacramento.
the mayor in Sacramento.
Phoenix Suns.
Phoenix
You're
Suns.
thinking
Phoenix
of
Suns.
Dennis
He was
Johnson.
Phoenix Suns.
Yeah.
He played for the Suns. He
Yeah.
was the mayor of Sacramento.
Yeah,
That's right.
absolutely.
That's
Great
right.
guy.
Yep.
Fantastic guy.
Yep.
Did a lot. There's been, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger. He started out as a bodybuilder, became an actor, then he became a governor.
Yep.
And there's a lot of others. Bill Bradley, Knickerbockers.
Knicks.
He
Yep.
was a state senator.
Absolutely.
Those guys used their fame and fortune to get to the forefront, and then became difference makers. That's awesome. Fantastic.
So I think the discussion, we could talk about tactics.
Right.
We can agree on goals.
Yeah.
But tactically, does it make sense to alienate Jerry and half the country with a particular kneeling exercise?
So let me ask this question, because this would cause me to say, then let's take everything out. Should politics be taken out of the arena? And if so, then should we have to play the national anthem and then in the seventh inning of baseball games have everyone stop and stand and listen to God Bless America? If one isn't right, shouldn't we just take it all out so there's never an issue in the first place?
Well, I hope not. I'm for one who wants more inclusion in the
Certainly.
political process. I want citizens to pay attention to what's going on. So I don't take exception to people using their platforms
Right.
to bring up social issues.
Yeah, same. I agree. Same here. I think that's. I think that sends the wrong message. If we have to take it all out, then we're saying that. Then I think the conversation just never happens, and that's just dangerous.
That's
we can
dangerous.
never have the conversation at all. So yeah, I think that's kind of counterproductive than what we're trying to accomplish.
Certainly. You were gonna
I
say
agree.
something.
Politics are going to be a part of sport. It's accepted. It's the way it is.
Yep.
It's never going to change. I don't want it to be in the forefront, in my opinion. We're there to see the game. I want to see the game. I want to see the athletes excel. And whatever the political format might be, let's have that down in the background.
You know, the national anthem hasn't really been around all that long. And our Iowa connection, I'm reading the factoid, was that it didn't become the national anthem until signed into law by President Hoover.
Yep.
Wow.
100 years after it was written.
Yep. Almost like 1930. Yeah.
Right.
So we have 5 minutes, but I want to talk about the patriotism in the arena. So we know the Defense Department paid the National Football League to have it. So where is the threshold to say enough is enough? We're talking $700,000. Now, most people don't know the NFL is a legal nonprofit. So we're taking taxpayers' money. So the same taxpayers that pay to have the national anthem also pay for the dissent during the national anthem. So it goes back to my former question. Since we have politics in the arena, should we take the money out and the politics, or just allow it to be free-willing and allow people to express themselves however they feel? because something has to give. If you paid your ticket to see the game, for a minute, you paid your ticket to see the game, but taxpayers are also getting taxed in order to see the game.
Yeah, in many places, the taxpayers have built the stadiums
True
that
story.
the billionaires run
Yep.
their teams out of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
You bring up a good point when you say the billionaire owners.
that's true.
They ought to be the ones promoting. If the NFL is nonprofit, that $700,000 taxpayer money should not be happening.
Exactly.
It should not be happening. The billionaire owners should promote, and they should promote patriotism. They should promote their sport, promote their athletes.
Yeah, and you know, I wasn't even aware that occurred until you made us aware of that a couple of days ago, and I just thought that was so odd. I just never would have fathomed that. It appears though there's this forced upon patriotism, and if we have patriotism, we have, and I agree with you, Jerry. You know, if the owners believe in that, that's their business. They promote it. We shouldn't be forced upon it to do those things, and I just thought that was just that was shocking, very surprising.
Yeah. Well, and so I want to just ask one last kind of all-encompassing question. You bring up these guys will be adored 20 years from now. Some would say, no, they won't. Why? Why and why not? If you guys could quickly say why they should or shouldn't be based on the current circumstance.
We've read this book. We've seen it before. This is nothing new under the sun. We've got a current social dynamic that someone brings attention to. In the moment, they're ostracized, and later on, we figure out that their cause was worthy enough to get behind. And I think history will tell the story. And so I'm often asking myself and my children and my wife, you know, what side of history are we going to be on when this comes up, and how do you want to be remembered at that time? And we think back people who went against Ali and John Carlos and all the other athletes who stood up at that moment. They were not celebrated in the moment. It wasn't until years later that we recognized that their voice was valuable.
Anyone else quickly?
Well, Rosa Parks was criticized by some because that wasn't the way to do it. Go to the back of the bus. You fight your way up a different way.
Right.
So I think the do not hire list that the Kaepernick is put on, we'll look back on that. Some people will be mighty critical and say he got what he deserved. But a lot of people that said he stood up for what he believed in.
He stood up for what he believed in, and what did he give up?
Yeah.
He gave up the chance to be a one heck of a quarterback, right?
Yep.
And write a lot of records, and he didn't get to do that. Will he still? Probably not. He's getting a little bit older now, and he probably won't get another chance.
Certainly.
And that's sad.
Yes, it
That's
is.
sad because he could have been one heck of an athlete. But he stood up for what he believed in, and I do admire him for that.
Okay. Well, thank you all for this robust discussion. Nationalism and sport are often intertwined, as sports provide a venue for symbolic competition between nations, states, cities, and schools. If we allow sport to be on the field or court that becomes the greatest equalizer, then we can use it as a platform to learn about varying views. If not, it will only continue to divide us, and that is to our peril. Please be slow to speak, slow to anger, quick to listen. Until next time, good day, and thank you for joining us on Ethical Perspectives on the News.